Hey, it's Rich on Planet PE. So if you are new to the channel, if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe. Today's is all about trying to get as much as we can done, and it's all about trying to come from you guys and the things that you're gonna hopefully be good at, and also the things that maybe need some help. So if it lags in a little bit in and out, it's not a big surprise. I've got quite a bit going on, so hopefully that'll settle down as we go. If there's any topics, guys, whack it in the chat and we will get going. So I can see already there's a few people talking about needing some sports psychology because they've got a paper 2 exam coming up. That's no worries there. So like I say, if you're already in the chat, whack something in there. Otherwise, we will get going, and we'll start with the paper 2 things that some people are looking at, and then get ourselves moving. So, as is combined into paper 1, yeah, most people's are. So, just for the sake of Abby in there, we'll start with the sports psychology. We'll then sort of flip between different topics as people see fit. I'm kind of here for you guys. So, let's have a look at sports psychology first up. So, let's hopefully get this working a bit better than we did the other week. So, here we go then. Paper 2 is that bad boy there. And we're just going to transition into our paper 2 one. So here we go. Okay, so paper 2, so sports psychology. Quite a straightforward topic if you get it. If it's one of those ones that you are not so confident with, slightly more difficult, but we'll hopefully try and get that solved super quick for you. So I'm just going to drag it onto my other screen so I can actually see it. So then we can go through. So sports psychology, really quickly. We've got certain aspects that you absolutely need to know. So let's start looking at a classification of skills. So with this topic, it's just really understanding that we've got certain areas that are going to have different requirements in what is needed for the skills. So we work on a continuum of skills, and sports and activities lie somewhere along those. So where you need to really try and grasp and where your paper 2 topics are sometimes a bit of an issue, around people's confusions about where each of the topics sort of lie. So in here then we've got these classifications. So we can classify from open and closed, we can classify basic and complex, self-paced, externally paced, and gross or fine. So with those topics, we need to break them down. So basically the difference between an open skill and a closed skill is how reliable or how repeatable it is. So if I was going to be doing an open skill, it's affected by the environment. So every single time I'm going to do that activity, it's going to be a bit different. So things like the co-actors, so the different people who are on the pitch with you, they can affect it. They can move at different speeds every time. Your teammates move at different speeds, they're in different places. So it's going to be different every single time. Whereas when it's a closed skill, every time we do that activity or every time we do that skill, it's exactly the same. So if I was going to do a layup in my sports hall at work, or I was going to do a layup in the NBA, it's essentially the same. A free throw is even more closed than that. So we're looking at basically how affected by the environment it is. Difference between basic and complex, super easy. Basic skills have very few decisions. Complex skills have many decisions and are therefore more complex. So if you were a novice, the complex skills are going to be much more difficult because they require a little bit of learning. Self-paced, externally paced, essentially you either choose when you start it or somebody else does. So if I'm batting in cricket, I don't really select about when I do the skill because the bowler's bowled it and I'm reacting to that. Whereas if I'm bowling, that's completely self-paced because I would decide when I let go of the ball. Gross and fine, essentially about how large the muscle groups are. So gross skills are things that, jumping, running, using these big muscle groups, whereas fine skills are all about precision. So something like archery, golf putting, darts, they would all be examples of fine skills because they're all about precision, whereas gross skills are more about power. So people in the chat, guys, how are we with classification of skills? Is that one that you think you've got nailed? Is that an easy topic? Is it something that we need to look at in a bit more detail? Those of you who are watching it not live, again, the resources are on there. Pause it if you need to look at any content. But essentially, we've got some different visuals there for you to try and use. So just looking in the chat then, so people are saying it's pretty fine, it's an easy topic, and things like that. So okay, we will move on really quickly from there then. So anyone who's new, just say hi in the chat, guys, just so we can we go from there. Nice to see that some of my students are in here as well. So goal setting. Goal setting is something that you need to understand. It's something you really need to try and develop your knowledge as far as what the difference between a novice performer and the experienced performer. So if we're going to use goal setting, the whole point is that we're going to try and make sure that goal is met. It's going to mean that it's going to be motivating and things like that. If I was a novice, there's certain goals that I couldn't be set because I'd only not do them. Whereas if I'm an expert, there's certain goals that if I was set, they wouldn't really matter to me because that's not important. So let's take this idea first of all. So if you're a novice, it means you're a beginner. You're new at that activity. You're learning how to do it. If I was set a goal which is an outcome goal, that means that it's all about the end result, winning or losing. The problem with that, if I was a novice, would be that I would be set a goal that I can't really achieve. I'm only going to not do it. Whereas a performance goal is all linked to your performance. It's not compared to anybody else. So that would be a really good one for a novice to be set. So we've got these two types of goals, performance goals and outcome goals. Generally, if we're going to get a question that might be extended in this one, it would be linked to the difference between a novice performer and a expert performer, and about the appropriateness of goal setting. Now, all goals, when we set them, are going to use this SMART target. So if the one you've got on the screen, guys, it's different in some of the examples. So for instance, an AQA, it's not achievable, it's agreed. For Edexcel, I believe it is agreed, so it is achievable. So it's just those sort of things that you just got to make sure we're looking at. So when we look at a SMART goal, it has to be specific, which means that basically it's going to focus your mind, it's going to focus all of your energy towards that target. We need to make it measurable so that we know if we're achieving it or not. We need to make sure that it's agreed for AQA, so therefore it's not just being set for you, so therefore it's not something that you're thinking, well, that's kind of pointless. It needs to be achievable if you're looking at Edexcel, because again, it's no point setting a goal that you can't do. Realistic, similar idea. And then time bound. And the reason it needs to be time bound is that we need to make sure that it's a goal that we can actually go and finish. So if I say to you guys, right, you've got some assessments at some point, you'd be like, oh, fine. The fact that some of you have got assessments this week, next week, the reason that you're here is that we obviously have a finishing date. So we've got a point where these exams are finishing. I'm just going to muck about my blind because I'm keep going a bit bright and a little bit darker, but not really that much of an issue. Okay, so just head over into the chat. So goal setting and SMART targets. Has anybody got any questions about that? Is there anything that people need to look at? Esther, I've seen Planes and Axis, and thanks for saying on Instagram as well. We're going to do that shortly, just looking quickly at some of the psychological things. So is there anything with goal setting that anybody needs further clarification on, or the sort of things that you're going to be asked in there? Now, those of you who aren't watching live, there's going to be a slight delay along the way because there's a slight latency between me saying things and things going in the chat and things like that. There we go, you can't see me now. Okay, so Florrie's also saying that she wants to look at obesity, physical and mental health. Yeah, so we will look at all that as well. No problems from there. Okay, so in OCR, it's recorded rather than realistic. Okay, that's a great point to note. Okay, so next quick topic here, information processing. So, information processing, we have the input, which is where all the information is coming into us from the display. So at the moment, you guys are watching this using your senses and all of the information. So the fact I've got this random thing here, there's a picture there, all that is all coming in, but you're not that interested by it. It's something that you're using and then very quickly just going, I don't need it. And that's what we call selective attention. So during a game of football, we know the grass is green, we know the ball is white or yellow in the winter, and we don't really care. It's not important. So we very quickly get rid of that attention. Okay, what we call a selective attention. We select the things that we attend to, we ignore the things that we don't want. And what that does is that then that helps us to then make decisions based on the information. So if you had too much information, if you had too little information, you would potentially make the wrong decision. So that then leads into the decision making. And this is where all the information from your short-term memory, from your long-term memory is held for you to be able to then go, okay, I've seen this before, this is the decision I make, there's something coming at me, I'd better make the decision to go and move, to put my hands in the way so I can catch it. Or it's coming very, very quickly, I can't get that, I better duck so it doesn't hit me in the face. So you've got all these different things that are going on, and that is all because of what's happened in the input. If you are a novice, your ability to selectively attend won't be as good because you're not as experienced. So let's imagine that you're playing cricket and the ball's coming out of somebody's hand like this. Somebody who is experienced will go, well, that's going to spin like an off break. Somebody who's not experienced will see it land, see it spin, and then be like, oh, it's spun. So the more experienced you are, the better you are at selective attention or selectively attending to the relevant stimuli. So basically we get rid of all the irrelevant stuff. When we are doing the selective attention, that is everything about the senses. So it's things you hear, things you see, how it feels, all those sort of things. The decision making is actually you doing it. So you choosing to do it. So for instance, you might be flicking through songs at the moment, you're currently going to pick which one you're going to do, which one you're going to do. That's the one I want to listen to. That's the decision has been made. You actually pressing start is the output. So going back to this idea of a cricketer or a rounders player or basketball, it doesn't really make a difference. A ball is coming towards me. I've made the decision that I need to move to my left to be able to then catch the ball. The output is then me doing it. Now, the feedback is going to come from different things. Was I successful? Did it go in my hand? Oh, no, I've missed it. Okay. I've got now some feedback to go back into the input to realize, oh, I've made a mistake. I now need to go and make a new decision and a new output. If you made the right decision, that will go back in to then hopefully give you better decision making because you're like, that's how I should do the skill. And that's where I was saying that a difference between a novice and an expert is that. So I've got a video on my channel which looks at Cristiano Ronaldo and the difference between him and somebody who's just a normal footballer playing at a club level. And the real difference is that he's worked out much, much earlier what is going to happen. So again, if I was playing cricket, I would be able to see the ball was coming towards me. I'd be able to have already worked out what's going to happen because of all the body movements, everything that's happened before. So I'm picking those cues up really, really early, whereas someone who is a novice maybe is only reacting to the ball because their only knowledge is that there's a ball coming towards me. I'd better see what it does, and then the decision's made a bit later, therefore the output's a bit later, and then maybe that feedback comes later. Okay, that was a mistake, I need to do it differently. So Abby's saying, can I give a sport example for each part of the processing? So there's ones on the visual already. Hopefully you can look at football, a knockout in boxing, the conversion, so hopefully they'll help you, Abby. So is there anything on there, guys, that anybody is struggling with? Are there any bits of the information processing that anybody is just a bit worried about or would like any more to go over? So I'll do one more paper 2 bit and they'll open up to you guys. So I've already seen that people want to do planes and axes, super easy. And then from there we'll try and move on. So let's just have a look. I think they might have had a bit of a lag. I think we might be right now. So sorry if you're experiencing some buffering. It's telling me that the stream quality is a bit poor. So sorry if you're being affected by that one. So one more topic on paper 2. And we will have a look at arousal. So, arousal is a topic that generally people find okay but answer quite poorly. So, if you have a look at the inverted U graph, we need to be able to break that up into 3 different parts. So, with those 3 different parts, we want to talk about part 1, the middle bit, and then part 3. Okay, so part 1, part 2, part 3, that way. So in part 1, we're saying here that as arousal increases, so does performance, up until optimum. So what do we mean by the optimum levels of arousal? What does that mean to you guys? So just pop it in the chat if you think you know it. So what do we mean by the optimum levels of arousal? Just hoping that people are still with us and the lag isn't too bad, because there was a point where it all slowed down very, very slowly, and I think I might have lost 1 or 2 viewers along the way. But the stream is now excellent, it's how it tells me, so we should be okay. So, what do we mean by optimum levels of arousal? Pop it in the chat. A little bit quiet in the chat today, guys, so it's just me talking to myself, really. So, optimum levels of arousal means that it's the point where your performance is at its best, okay, or you know, like I say, its best, or we call it its optimal. So what that means is that we are performing at our best. It doesn't mean that the arousal is the highest, because every single sport has the zone, okay? So in this zone, we're talking about basically your information processing is happening perfectly, that you're getting rid of all this irrelevant information, that you're only attending to the relevant stimuli. And what that means is that we shouldn't necessarily make any mistakes. So if we're not making the mistakes, then the advantage of that is that we should be performing way, way better. So in that situation, we're only focusing on the things that are relevant. We are able to make decisions maybe quicker, so therefore our output can be correct. As we then increase our arousal further, we actually then go beyond optimum. So arousal still continues to increase, however, the performance drops. And here, we may be taking in too much information. More likely, we're not attending to the relevant stimuli, so therefore the decisions we make are going to be worse. Along the way, the output is also going to be worse. So that's something to think about, is that optimum isn't the highest level of arousal, it's the best level of arousal to get the best performance. Now in different sports that's going to change. So if you look at the graph underneath, essentially for a fine skill it's shifted to the left, for a gross skill it's shifted to the right. What that's telling us is basically that we need less arousal to be at optimum for a fine skill, we need more arousal for those gross skills. So that kind of makes sense if, you know, we're saying that a fine skill is about precision and a gross skill is more about the power sort of movements. So that's kind of the thing to think about. So when we look at arousal, different sports need different levels of arousal. A fine skill generally needs lower levels of arousal to be at optimum. A gross skill generally needs higher levels of arousal to be at optimum, okay? So that's kind of where we are with that one. So we'll keep flipping between. So we're now going to go over to paper 1, and there was a request about planes and axes. So planes and axes is a topic that for some reason students find really, really difficult, and we can solve that super, super easy. So let me just shift my PowerPoints over. Let's get rid of this one. There we go. Okay, so in our, let's bring me back on here. Okay, so on our paper 1 PowerPoint, and I'll just bring it up, we have a lot of topics, and planes axis is the one that students really struggle, and I'm never, like I say, I'm never that sure why. So where we want you guys to understand is linking to the movement. So every plane has a particular movement, and within that movement it links to a direction, and that's all a plane is. Okay, so in the simplest form, that is literally all we need to understand. Now in our planes, they are also linked to axes. Okay, so sorry about this, just lost my PowerPoint for a second. There we go. Okay, so that's what I want. Just transition that one across. Oh, it's not going to work. Hang on, sorry about this. We had this problem last time, and I know what the issue is now. So I use a program called OBS, which means that I can basically be like a director and go through and kind of go, I'm going to show you this when I want to show you this, and things like that. The slight issue with that is that sometimes I get it a bit wrong when I am doing the directing. Here we go. Okay, so let's just transition that across here. So there you go, I'm back here. Okay, so in our paper 1 stuff, so we're going to go for planes and axes. So let's get the visual for you. There we go. So planes and axes. This is, like I say, a topic that I think you should be better at than you are. So sorry about that little delay there. Just need to get that so I can see the chat. Okay. So planes and axes. You can move either forwards and backwards, you can move side to side, or you can rotate. We can't really do anything else. That's all as humans we can do. Okay, so any movements that we do are a mixture of those different things, but they happen at different times. So if I was going to be moving forwards, so let's say I'm running. I'm going to be running, so basically I'm going to be moving between flexion and extension. That is what we call on a sagittal plane. So the way to think about it is that we divide the body into two, and it's a left and a right. So that's how we do the sagittal. So imagine I was cut straight down here, and I'm going to go like that. If I move forwards or backwards, that is on a sagittal plane. So flexion and extension are on sagittal planes. Okay. The other way that I can divide my body is like this, so straight through my head like that, and that would give me a front and a back. Now if that happens, the only ways that I can move are side to side. So basically abduction and adduction. So a frontal plane only moves really abduction and adduction. So let's say you were to see a tennis player playing a shot, and their arms out here, and it'd say, what plane is it? Well, the arms moved to the side, it's moved away from the midline, so therefore it has to be abduction. Quite easy. And then the other one is we're rotating. So again, if I've got been cut through the middle, I've got a top and a bottom. Well, the only way I can move from there is a rotational way. So that is a transverse plane. So for planes, that's literally all you need to understand, is that a frontal plane is flexion and extension, so moving forwards or backwards. A sagittal plane is abduction or adduction, so therefore we're going to be having the movements out to the sides, and then we've got our transverse plane, which is going to have some sort of rotation. That's pretty much it. Okay, now they are linked to ways of rotating. So if I'm moving forwards, then that's going to link to a slightly different plane, so that's going to be a transverse plane. So if I was running, flexion extension, I'm going to lean forwards or lean back. So that's for a transverse axis. Okay, so we've got this idea of sat, so sagittal and transverse, if I'm going to be running forwards or backwards. If I'm falling sideways, we've got our frontal plane, so the one that goes with me moving side to side, and I get smashed through the belly button. So a axis is that point of rotation, so a sagittal axis will mean that I'm going to fall sideways, so frontal and sagittal for falling sideways. And then we've then got our transverse plane, which goes with the longitudinal axis, which goes straight through my head. So in my chair, I'm able to go through a longitudinal axis and rotate like this. So if I was a diver doing a full twist and I'm going right around myself like this, then that is going to be on a transverse and longitudinal plane. Okay, so in the chat, guys, is that helpful? So we've got our sagittal plane, forwards and backwards. We've got our frontal plane, where we're forward, we've got a front and a back, and therefore we move side to side. And then we've got our transverse, a top and a bottom, where it's going to be a bit of a rotational sort of thing. Okay, so just in the chat, guys, I know that the chat's gone a bit laggy because YouTube's just told me that. Is that okay as a topic? Is that something that you guys hopefully understand a bit better? So frontal plane is flexion and extension, sagittal plane, abduction and adduction, and then transverse plane is a rotational sort of force. We started off doing a bit of paper 2 to start off with. We're going to flip-flop through. The easiest way is in the chat. Put the sort of topics that you would need from me, and I'll go through them when we can. So, Esther, but if the frontal plane is separation of the front and the back, how would abduction and adduction take place? Good one. Right, give me a sec. Where are my little camera lenses? Okay, so can't find that. I've hit my hand. Okay, so if I have a front and a back, for them to stay together, the only way they can move is to slide across each other like that. Okay, so when it was front and back, they slid this way. Okay, so the fact that we've just changed the direction, which is what a plane is, instead of being here, we've changed the plane, so therefore it's gonna have to move that way or this way. Well, the only movements that we have in the body that go to the side are adduction, so abduction or adduction. Okay, so to see what, do you also have a video about planes and axes before the game? Yep, so Jess, on the video, on the channel, I have a playlist of all of the planes and axes videos. So I've done one on planes, one on axes, and a couple on planes and axes together. So I always feel it's easier to get if you do planes first, then bring axis in, and then stick it together. Can I do about studential isolates? Absolutely, because that is a really, really simple topic. So we won't be able to take long to do that one. So anybody else about planes and axes, anything that we need to clear up? So essentially, different limbs, different movements happen on a different plane. If you put them all together, that movement is on a certain plane. So if I run forwards, I'm going to be moving forwards. I'm going to have flexion and extension going on. So that's a sagittal plane. Because I'm leaning forwards or leaning back, that also brings in the transverse axis. If I'm falling sideways, then obviously I've got my frontal plane with the sagittal axis, and then if I'm rotating, we've got transverse and longitudinal. Okay, so let's have a look. So diet and nutrition, yeah, no wishes there. Commercialization, absolutely, Florrie, because that's a topic that probably most of you are going to have in your exams. We'll also do performance enhancing drugs as well, because I know that that's going to probably come up in a lot of people's exams along the way, because it's a topic that is really, really popular and one that we want to see how you've done on. Any other questions for anybody else about this topic? Right, let's have a look then at some of the ones that you guys were just talking about along the way. So let's just flick through. Components of fitness, I think you either know that one or you don't. Oh, actually, let's just go to this one. So in your exams, there's always going to be a question around data. So it could be a heart rate, it could be somebody's performance in a certain skill. You just need to analyze the trends. So has something stayed the same? Has it gone down? Has it gone up? Okay, that's the thing to kind of look out for in those data questions. So for instance, the one I've got there, if you have a look, the fact that we've got some different vertical jumps from different groups of students, we can say we've got above average, we've got a number that are below average, that you just got to pick out those trends along the way on there. Okay, so let's just have a little flick. Let me just transition me so it looks amazing in the edit. let's just go back to my first one. There we go, I'm back here. So that just enables me to just go back to the paper 2 ones, and we will look very quickly at some of those topics that you guys have just requested. So like I say, guys, if there's anything in the chat that you want to know, just put anything in there if you've got a question about anything, and then I can try and go through it and try and help you out as good as I can. So let me just get my paper 2 PowerPoint back on. Again, guys, if you don't already subscribe, please do, even if I know that you're not going to be around for GCSE PE too much longer. It just helps the channel out a little bit. I say the channel, it means me. What we're doing, slideshow. So I have to do these in little windows when I do them. Okay, so just transition back to there. So you've got my face in the corner again. So let's just go through those ones. So we had a bit of a question about not arousal. So we had one about engagement patterns. Okay, so we'll do that very quickly. So engagement patterns, basically these are trying to get you to understand why certain groups of people might exercise or do activity more than others. So let me just go back into chat very quickly. So yeah, so we're doing influences on participation now. With the data, do you refer to the exact number when comparing trends or just in general? So with those, use the facts and use the data that's been provided for you. So if you're just going to say it's going down, there needs to be something suggesting why you're saying that. So use the data that is available. If you're saying that let's say that there was a question about obesity and it said, which two people are obese, you would have to say, let's say, person 1 and person 3 because their BMI is blah blah blah. So that's using the data that's been given to you. Otherwise, it's just a bit of a guess. So yeah, generally there's going to be one question on each of the topics, in each of the papers. Obviously, because papers are being put together, it's going to differ from school to school because every school is doing a slightly different paper or a different way to try and make sure that their students show the things that they know. So let's just have a look. Can I do gas exchange? Yep, I will do engagement patterns. I'll do performance enhancing drugs, and then I'll go on to the respiratory system because they're, again, quite important topics. So just have a look here. So we've got loads of different factors which affect people's participation. In the colours that you've got there, they are the different groups. So we've got families and friends, we've got age, we've got gender, we've got race, religion, culture, and disability. Essentially, we could group people based on these. So if you think about a general form that you fill in, you say gender, you say age, you have to state your race, religion, things like that. So that's kind of where they're broken up. What the example wants you to know or understand is that maybe for certain groups there is more factors that affect them participating than others. Generally, things like their socioeconomic status are going to affect everybody in different ways. So younger people have got less money than older people. People have families and things like that. Obviously, time and things like that are going to affect more. Things like role models are going to have a bigger effect on different genders. So England cricket talk about this idea that if you can't see it, you can't be it. So if you don't see people who are like you, it's difficult to maybe go and play that sport. Same with race, religion and culture. Again, if you see people more like you, you might be more inspired to go and play that sport. So therefore role models are created, and therefore that brings in more media coverage, more money into the sport, and again maybe increases the popularity about it. With disability and also gender as well, we've got access. Can everybody go and play the sport? Is it available to everybody? And things like that. So like I say, with engagement patterns, you've just got to think about the barriers. So what things might be in the way that stop you doing this sport that you want to do it as often as you want, to do it at all. So there is data out there that suggests that certain ethnic groups have a real difference in how much they participate between certain activities, but also just generally. So that might be a cultural thing, it might be a time thing, it might be a link to socioeconomic reasons, lots and lots of different things in there. Again, same with gender, so and also age. So once sport doesn't become compulsory, so the fact that PE lessons are only compulsory until 16, that obviously there is a drop off because it's not compulsory. So those people who aren't as motivated, that aren't already doing it outside of school, therefore maybe drop off. Also the difference between sport and exercise, that makes a big difference as well. So as far as this is a topic, it's just understanding what the barriers are, so what I've got in the graph at the top, and how that might affect each of the different groups. So that's it really for the engagement patterns. It's just thinking about, well, what things are going to impact their ability to go and perform and go and do it. So is that okay? Anything else that anybody wants to know on engagement patterns? Sorry, I keep looking away from the camera, but like I say, I've got 2 different screens going at the moment. Also, there's quite a big lag as well, so if it feels like I just stopped talking, I think there's about a 30-second delay between something I say, it coming up, or you being able to type, and then, yeah. The problem with not being on the side, and I don't think I've quite got the internet connection that they have. So, anything else on that topic, just whack it in the chat. I can always go back if we have skipped forward. Right then, let's go through performance enhancing drugs, because this is a topic that you really need to get right. Okay, so performance enhancing drugs, they are illegal in sport because they provide an artificial advantage over other people in your sport. Now, the reason that somebody might take it is that they believe that other people are, so they might think that it's going to level the playing field. The main reasons that people are going to take performance enhancing drugs is that they can increase their wealth, they can increase their fame, they can increase their chances of winning, all those different things. So if you were to get a question about performance enhancing drugs, just generally, and why someone might take them, then you're looking at the fact that they can increase their chances of success, they can increase their fame, their wealth, and leveling the playing field. Now, different drugs will have a different impact. So if you were to get an extended question on performance enhancing drugs, it's really key that you understand that some drugs will make no difference to some performance, and other drugs will be the one that they absolutely want to use. So let's look at these in some sort of logical order. So we've got anabolic agents. You will probably think of them as being steroids. In AQA, please don't use the word steroids, they are anabolic agents. They are going to increase the testosterone levels of a performer and the ability to synthesize proteins. What that means in short is that you get stronger, more powerful, so therefore faster. You can throw things further, you can kick things further, you're going to be quicker, you're going to be able to run faster. All those real power things are going to be developed. There are some negative side effects to that. So along the way, you've got infertility, there's links to heart problems, there's mood swings, like I say, aggression is a real big one. So there are reasons why you wouldn't take that. If I was a sprinter, if I was a rugby player, if I was a weightlifter, this would be the drug of choice, because you're going to increase your power, you're going to increase your muscle mass, so therefore you can work harder for longer. Sounds perfect. So in training, you're going to be able to do more and for longer. It's not really the sort of drug that somebody's going to take to improve their performance. So if I just took it before a race, it's going to make no difference. It's a training drug. So let's say that you and I were training. You train on day one, you're not. Day two, you might be sore. I'm not. You don't train because you're sore, I do. I'm already a day ahead of you after 2 days. Think about that over a longer period of time. that's really what the advantage you're looking at with steroids. So that recovery time is so much shorter. When we look at beta blockers are mainly used for fine motor control. So if I was a archery player, it'd be the perfect drug. So it will lower your resting heart rate, it will lower your heart rate generally, it will reduce your feelings of anxiety. If I'm an archery player, that's perfect because they actually fire the arrow between heartbeats. So if you think about, if I put my thumb up there, when my heart beats, it flickers slightly. I'm going to fire between those heartbeats. The lower my heart rate, the kind of better chance I've got. Now, if I was a sprinter, that'd be a terrible drug for me because it's slowing everything down. Therefore, it's going to have an impact on my reaction time and things like that. So again, when we're saying about certain sports it's going to be good for, other sports it wouldn't be for. So the appropriateness of the use to improve performance would be very different in different sports. No matter what, these are illegal in sport. If you were found taking them, you would get banned, you would get fined, you could lose all sponsorships, it would damage the sport, loads and loads of different things. So that's the sort of thing to try and think. Diuretics are used to try and get rid of any excess fluid. So if I had been taking another drug, that would be the one that somebody used to mask the drug. Mainly they're used in combat sports that have weight categories. So think about Billy Joe Saunders, who fought Canelo last night. Canelo's really, really strong at that weight. So if we can be the strongest we can, we've got a much, much better chance. So somebody might naturally have a higher weight, and actually by getting rid of all their fluid, they're going to lose weight. So therefore they can maybe fight at a lower weight and therefore have a better chance of winning. So that's really with diuretics. Narcotic analgesics are painkillers, so they're going to allow you to overtrain. They're going to be able to mask any pain of injuries, so that could be any sport. Peptide hormones, mainly for us, we're thinking about EPO, which is erythropoietin. Basically, that enables you to have more red blood cells. You can work harder for longer without fatigue, and therefore things that require cardiovascular endurance or muscular endurance means that you can work at higher intensity for longer. The problem with that is that you end up with blood with a lot more sediment in it, a lot heavier, more viscous, because it's got a lot more red blood cells than you would normally have. So again, some good things, some bad things. Stimulants increase your alertness, reduce tiredness. Any sport that requires reaction time would be a good example of that. And then there's blood doping, which does the same thing as EPO, but takes a lot longer because we take blood out. We freeze it, we wait for the body to recover, regenerate new blood cells, and then put the blood back in. So basically we've got more blood, so therefore we've got more red blood cells. So that is drugs in sport. Now, what you would like to be able to do in an extended question is talk about the reasons why someone would take it, what the disadvantages are of taking it for the performer, but also linked to the sport itself. So if you look at something like cycling, for years and years and years, there was lots of issues with people taking performance-enhancing drugs and in their activity producing some ridiculous times. Now, if everybody's taking it because they believe that everybody's taking it, then that idea of leveling the playing field becomes an issue. And also then if they think everybody's doping and they're not clean in their sport, that has a real big impact on the sport itself and how people view the sport. So that could have links to the commercialization of the sport. It could have links to obviously the health of the performer, but the reputation of the sport is the thing that can get damaged the most. So in the chat, guys, anything about drugs in sport that anybody would like to just have a quick look at, or a good look at anything in any further detail? Any random questions that anyone's got, I'm happy to answer. It might not be about necessarily this topic. We're going to do commercialization in a second, and that's probably going to take us up to our last topic, which was about respiration. Okay, so let's go on to commercialization. Okay, so the things that you need to be able to do are define commercialization. So that is just the act of bringing a product to market to try and make profit. So what that would mean is that we are essentially using sport as a vehicle to try and sell something. So just going into the chat, we had a 6 marker. What's the most suitable drug for a 100 meter sprinter? Anabolic for power or strength? But you could argue stamina. Yeah, so you could argue one drug over another. So although a 6 mark or 9 mark question might ask you to talk about a certain thing, an AO3 point is to offer an alternative. Okay, so let's say that you were saying that a 100 meter sprinter would benefit from using anabolic agents, but you would argue actually maybe stimulants would have a bigger impact. As long as you can justify it, an alternative is an acceptable thing to do in those questions. Okay, so yeah, nice one. So going back to this then, so we need to understand that we've got sponsorship, we've got media, and we've got sport. So sport is being used as a vehicle to sell stuff, basically. So if you think about the Leicester City shirt, for instance, we've got Visit Thailand as a sponsor. If you look at the Manchester City sponsor that's in the visual on the screen, they've got Etihad. Well, Etihad are paying millions and millions of pounds to be on the shirt of Manchester City. And the reason they're doing that is that they want advertising. Now, I'm saying it's costing millions, but think how often that shirt is seen. Anybody who buys a Manchester City shirt is basically walking around with an advert on them. Any player that has a shirt on is going to have that as an advert on them. Well, every single one of Manchester City's games are being shown on TV. So therefore, that advertising is there without us really thinking about it. That commercialization, the fact that Etihad are in our face, that they're being shown there, the fact that we've got Visit Rwanda on an Arsenal sleeve, and these things that we notice. Well, the whole point of that is that, like I say, the company are aiming to make money out of it. So it might cost them £5 million a year to sponsor a shirt sleeve, but they're hoping to get more than that back by all the advertising, by the fact that their brand awareness is improving. Now, the way that money's coming in is because of the media. So the media are basically showing the games. They're showing around the world. It becomes really, really attractive to companies to get involved with sport. So that link to sponsorship and the media comes in that way. The media need to make some money about themselves. So what they do is that they obviously advertise, have advertising time themselves. So the fact that at half time there is a advert break, so they're selling that advertising space. But also, we're buying that subscription service. So it costs us to go and have Sky Sports. It costs us to have BT Sport. It costs us where those sports are being shown. So they're getting all the subscription money from all the viewers. So they need a product that people want to watch. So the sport itself is really, really important so that they can get enough money to go and sell a product. That the sport itself is attractive enough that people want to watch it. Well, the fact that we're getting more money in the sport means that the sport itself is going to have better facilities, maybe better training. The fact that people get paid more means that it's more attractive to do as a living, so therefore the quality might go up and up and up. Again, more people want to watch it because the quality is getting better, more sponsorship comes in, more money comes in, and we end up with football being like it is. Now, most sports aren't like football. So, for instance, at the moment, the county championship is going on in cricket. Nobody's there to watch it because they can't, but that's not too different to normal. That, people will watch England, but they won't go and want to watch Surrey or Middlesex or Leicestershire. So, the sport itself needs to be marketable. So, what's happened there is that actually sports have changed to be more marketable. So, can anybody in the chat think of a reason or an example of how sport has actually changed so that it's more marketable, so that sponsorship becomes more attractive, so that the TV companies want to show that sport, that maybe more people can go and watch it online, on TV, or in the crowd itself. So how has commercialization affected a particular sport? That could be the sort of questions that you're asked. So anybody in the chat think they know that one? So any examples of a sport that has been directly affected by commercialization? So no one so far. Okay, I will give you one. So football has been affected because kickoff times have changed. So kickoffs have changed to being things like 4 o'clock on a Sunday, whereas traditionally the kickoff time is 3 o'clock on a Saturday. The fact that we've got kickoff times going on at the moment, we've got Mondays, we've got Wednesdays, we've got all sorts. So cricket, someone said, is impacted by commercialisation. Absolutely. So the fact that the IPL is like the highest grossing product out there means that people want to watch it. But the reason people want to watch it is that cricket has changed. So traditionally cricket lasts a really, really long time, that we can still draw after 5 days. The IPL is 20 overs. It's going to be over in 3 hours. People are happy to go and watch it for a really short period of time to go do that. And it also shows cricket in its best light. We've got people hitting sixes, we've got people hitting the ball a long way, we've got people diving catches, we've got people bowling fast. It's changed to be more marketable. The Test cricket is still there, and for the purists, that's great. But in lots and lots of countries, people don't watch Test cricket. In England and Australia, people do. In India, they do. Elsewhere around the world, that doesn't happen. So cricket has actually evolved for that to happen. So Wolverine Singer said that matches are rescheduled, which therefore has an impact, because if they're being rescheduled, that means that it may be more difficult for people to get there. So it has an impact on the spectator. Now, on this sort of question, you need to understand how commercialization has had an impact on the sport. So we could talk about how the sport needs to change. We could talk about how money's come into the sport, which has been good. We could talk about how maybe it's changed the sport completely, and that's affected the sport. You need to talk about how it affects the spectators. So the fact that the sports become more popular because they are on TV means that actually maybe it's more difficult to get a ticket. Maybe it's the price is massively increased, so therefore it's more difficult for people to access it. And again, linking to the fact that the positive is that they can watch it at home. You know, that they don't have to go to the matches anymore. They can watch it from home. They can watch much more a wide range of fixtures and not just their own team. They can be more informed. So there's things like that. You also need to understand how it affects the media or the company as well. So Katie's saying fans separated to reduce fights, early kickoff times. So that would be linking to hooliganism rather than commercialisation. So commercialisation and hooliganism are slightly linked, because obviously if there were loads of hooliganism around in football still, companies wouldn't want to get involved, because it would look maybe a bad way. It'll make their company look bad or see their product in a negative light. So definitely that has an impact from that perspective. But those things you said there, Katie, they are about hooliganism and how we reduce hooliganism. So again, that's a paper 2 topic, but it is slightly valid when we look at commercialization. Okay, right. So let's just have a look then at one of the paper 1 topics that somebody asked, and then we can get on with the rest of our lives. Okay, so we wanted to have a look at the respiratory system, because again, it's a topic that some people find more difficult than others. Some of you maybe find it really easy, but we'll have a look. So let me just get my paper 1 PowerPoint back up. So just in the chat, guys, when's everybody got their assessment? So my lot have theirs a week tomorrow. So maybe next Sunday we might look at doing another round of revision. But it depends on how you guys are thinking and also what you've got going on. I know some people out there feel a bit hard done by that the exams were cancelled, and then all of a sudden you've got a load of assessments that aren't exams but are very like exams. Yeah, it's a bit harsh. Right, let's just There we go. Let's just transition me back in there. Boom. Okay, let's just see what people are saying in the chat. Right, so Wolverine, can you explain the link between the media and sponsorship bit? Yeah. Okay, so if I've got a product, so let's say this is not a brand thing or I just don't have a better bottle. So let's say I'm My Protein. If they were to pay me to have this as a product, they would want enough viewers that would go, oh, My Protein, I might go and buy that. I don't have that because, generally, our videos get hundreds, whereas they'd be looking at hundreds of thousands is what they'd want. So the product that's being sold needs to be sold to as many people as possible. So therefore, the fact that the media are paying to show football or cricket or basketball, whatever, means that there's a product for the sponsor to then get involved with, and that's kind of how that works. So, without the sport, the media's got nothing to show. Without the media, the sponsorship have got nothing to be able to put their adverts on, and without the sport, they can't link themselves to the sport to actually see that the product's good or bad or whatever. So hopefully that helps. Okay, so can I recap mechanics of breathing? Absolutely. And we've got a few people doing theirs a week tomorrow, so we can do another one next week potentially then. So let's have a look then at mechanics of breathing. Mechanics of breathing is relatively straightforward if you understand pressure. Let's just get me through to the right one, so don't want that at the moment. I might have skipped. Oh, I did. I went past it. I did. Alright, try again. There we go. Okay, so we've got it down on the bottom left. Okay, so if anyone's watching it down there. So, mechanics of breathing. First thing to try and think, okay, is just to sit there in an exam and put your hand on your chest, things like that. So, when I breathe in, my chest goes up and out, okay? And the reason for that is that we need to try and create a pressure difference. So think about a slide, okay? If you're on a slide, you start from high and you finish low. That's the direction that pressure always goes. It goes from high to low, okay? So if I'm gonna breathe in, we're increasing the space, okay, by the ribs going up and out, and the diaphragm going from being curved to flattening. So all of that space of what we call our thoracic cavity is increased. Now, because the space is bigger, it means that pressure in the body is lower than it is outside of the body. So therefore, the only way the air can go is in. So remember, it goes from high to low. So let's say the pressure all outside the body is really, really, really high, okay? I need to lower the pressure inside the body so that the air comes in. And we do that by moving the ribs cage up and out, and the diaphragm going from being curved to flattening. Okay? So all that happens there is that the intercostal muscles, which are between the ribs, contract to move the rib cage. Okay? If those muscles did not contract, we wouldn't be able to create the pressure difference for air to rush into the body. Okay? When we breathe out, the rib cage falls down and in, and the diaphragm relaxes, and when it relaxes, it goes back to being this curved shape. And all that happens there is the thoracic cavity reduces, so pressure inside the body is now higher than it is outside the body, so pressure moves from high to low, and air leaves the body. Okay? So just recap that really, really quickly. So breathing in, rib cage goes up and out, diaphragm goes from being curved to being flat. The thoracic cavity increases in size, so the pressure is lower and air rushes in. When we breathe out, the rib cage goes down and in. The diaphragm goes from being flat to being curved. The thoracic cavity space reduces, so pressure is now higher. air moves from high concentration to low concentration, or high pressure to low pressure, so therefore air goes out of the body. Okay, so in the chat, does that help? On AQA, could they ask you to label the lung volumes graph? Absolutely, and they probably will. Okay, so with that, you need to know all of your different volumes. So me breathing in, normally in and out, is what we call tidal volume. So tidal volume will be the one that is the smallest one. Okay, so I breathe in and out. When I then start to exercise, my tidal volume increases because I breathe in and out without being forceful more, because we get tired, we do harder breaths. Okay, so tidal volume will change, and depending on rest, where it's quite small, or exercise, where it's a bit bigger. Inspiratory reserve volume, or IRV, is basically the difference between the top of tidal volume and the highest point of the graph. So if you ever got to label it, that's what we're talking about. It's just the difference between tidal volume and then the top bit that you can see. So basically, anytime the graph's going up, you're breathing in. Anytime it's going down, you're breathing out. Okay. So inspiratory reserve volume is basically the biggest, most forceful breath that you can do. Okay, so we define it as the maximum volume of air that can be inhaled in addition to tidal volume. So I've got tidal volume, it's the bit above that that becomes IRV, inspiratory reserve volume. Expiratory reserve volume, again, is the same thing but being expired. So this one is the maximum of air, maximum volume of air that is exhaled in addition to tidal volume. So we've got the tidal volume, the bottom of it, it's everything else that's below that. And that's what we call our expiratory reserve volume, or ERV. And then finally, we have the residual volume. So the residual volume is always the same. It never ever changes. So we've always got a bit of air left in the body. And the reason for that is that if we blew out everything, the lungs would basically fold in and stick to themselves, and then we'd have a problem, or they'd collapse. So we've got those different ones. Now, what you need to understand is the effect of exercise on the inspiratory reserve volume and the expiratory reserve volume. So the maximum amount is never going to change. So let's say that's always here. Okay. If tidal volume changes because I'm breathing in harder when I'm exercising and breathing out harder, the difference obviously changes. So during exercise, tidal volume increases, and inspiratory reserve volume and expiratory reserve volume actually reduce, because the difference between tidal volume and the top changes. So think of me at rest, me exercising, the difference is less. So during exercise, tidal volume increases, inspiratory reserve volume decreases, so does expiratory reserve volume. Residual volume never ever changes. Okay, so pop into the chat. So anything else that you guys want to understand about the respiratory system there? So know your definitions. So know tidal volume, you need to know vital capacity, you need to know expiratory reserve volume, inspiratory reserve volume, and inspiratory reserve volume, or residual volume. We need to understand that during exercise, tidal volume changes by increasing. Inspiratory reserve volume decreases, expiratory reserve volume decreases. So anything else from anybody as far as a quick topic that you want to do before I leave you and see you next week? Do I have any? Okay, so the issue with questions is that there is a massive copyright problem around sharing the questions. So let's say I went through a question and your school had chosen to use that one, that could affect the grades, things like that, but also AQA and Pearson and Hodder and all the different publishing companies own their questions. So I would happily do a run through of an exam and things like that. However, it would be a little bit of a problem for the channel, but also for me and for your schools as well. So that's the problem. Right, can I go through EPOC? Yeah, EPOC's pretty straightforward really. So EPOC is the excess post-oxygen consumption, essentially. So when we finish doing exercise, we don't just go, oh, that was all right, and just stop breathing normally. So if you have created an oxygen debt, so therefore when you were exercising, oxygen deficit I should say, so when you were exercising, you needed oxygen that wasn't available at the time, or you were working anaerobically, you would create an oxygen debt. So therefore any debt needs to get repaid, and we repay that after we exercise. So let's take 400 meters. 400 meters is probably the hardest activity out there. So you've got to run a quarter of a mile, and the best guys in the world do it, in under 45 seconds without worrying about it. They will finish the race and they will be blowing very, very, very hard. They will be breathing incredibly hard for quite a long period of time. And what they're trying to do there is that they're trying to rebalance their amount of oxygen, to try and get rid of carbon dioxide, to try and get rid of lactic acid that has been created. Because remember, lactic acid only gets created during anaerobic conditions, so therefore there wasn't oxygen available at that time in the supply that they needed. So with the EPOC, I might have a graph on it. With the EPOC, we are in a situation where, here you go, where we create an oxygen deficit. We had a certain amount of oxygen that was consumed during exercise, and then when exercise stops, we continue to breathe very, very heavily to try and repay that oxygen debt, which is what we call EPOC. So excess post exercise oxygen consumption. So basically, the reason you breathe hard after you've finished exercising. So we don't just stop and go, yeah, I'm good. The fact that we're there, breathing incredibly hard, and eventually your breathing starts to go back to normal because you've actually replenished the amount of oxygen that you needed during exercise. Right, let's just have a look. So we've got people saying I love it, thank you very much. So helpful, thanks for doing this. No problem, Demi. Super Jish, I'm in year 10 and I've got an end of year exam that we sent off my future college, a certificate form. What would be the most beneficial thing to revise? It depends on what topics you've done, but what I would look at is exam technique. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have time to go through things. What the frustrating thing for me, so I'm an examiner, or have been an examiner, I should say, in the past. Where it's frustrating is that you can see that students have revised loads and loads and loads, and they have got all the content in their mind. And there's a 3-mark question, and they get 1 mark out of 3. So 66% of their answer was not accepted by the examiner. Now, I knew they knew the answer because they got 1 mark, but they didn't get all the marks. So what's really, really important, this is for all of you, is that you get your technique sorted. So AO1 is facts. If you just keep reciting fact after fact after fact, you're going to limit yourself massively in most questions. We need to think about how that fact links to the scenario or the example that's been in the question. And then we need some AO3 content, which is you evaluating it. Basically saying, so what? Why is it important? What's the benefit? What's an alternative? Why is this even a thing? So that's the thing that I see people miss the most as far as when they're trying to get the best grade possible, is that they know the answer, they've revised, they've worked really, really hard, but they've never really tried enough about showing their teachers, here's a question, can you have a quick look? Now, because my students are doing really, really well, and they are sending me things that I've not asked them to do, and they're checking their technique, and that is the biggest thing that you can probably do at the moment with the short time that's left, is show your teacher that your technique is being worked on, and then by the time you sit that exam, hopefully you'll be in the best situation you can be. Okay? Right, anything from anybody else out there before I move, because it's getting a bit dark in here and I've suddenly turned all a bit blue looking at it because we're struggling for light. So if you're watching this not live, then good luck to you guys in any exams that you've got coming up. Anyone who is new to the channel, please like and subscribe, particularly those people in year 10, so you don't miss out on any of these things in the future. And I am on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, it's all planet_PE. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me. But just check the chat just a couple of times, so anything from anybody before we start heading off. No worries, Kate. Thank you very much for attending. So if it helps, guys, we can do just an open random session on next week. I think Sundays are generally the best for people, aren't they? But I don't know if that's too close to the exam. So I have a bit of time midweek if anybody wants it from there, but it's just trying to get enough people to know about it. So if anyone's got any ideas of that, that would be great. So the plan was to do it next Sunday, but again, we can do one in the week if that's helpful for people. But I know you've got other exams along the way, so yeah. So I'll schedule one for next Sunday. But if anybody wants one beforehand, then just ping us a message. Right, enjoy, guys. Good luck in your exams, and like I say, thanks very much for watching. But check us out on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Not dancing, anything on there, and it's all planet_PE. All right, cheers, guys.